Hey, I'm Tony,
I'm Craig.
and we're coming to you from the corner of a pub.
As the sun was setting o'er the bright meadows of Sherwood, a rebel hand set the head of...
Oh no, is she a smacker?
Chews with her, crunches carrots and everything with the mouth open.
So you're getting
Drives
to
me-
see the whole process as it happens.
The sound bothers me more than anything.
Just the smack.
the fact that I have to listen to you masticate. It's not cool.
I got almost given D Hall in junior high because I told a kid that he needs to stop masticating in public. I was like, ma'am, seriously, you're making me write down words out of a dictionary. I finally use one, and you want to send me to D Hall? What kind of message is that sending? And you could see the moral dilemma she was having at the meantime. She's like, just don't say that again. I was like, all right, hey Billy, your epidermis is showing. What? Where? You know, the old joke. Just like, Mr. Russell, you need to go out in the hallway.
I can see that being you.
It's like in French class. It was our second year of French class, and I'd already learned what we were learning. So I'm sitting back there, and I'm like, ooh, a dictionary. I'm already at the desk by the door because that's like the stop you're assigned before you're just kicked out.
Yeah.
And this book was really cool. This dictionary, it had all kinds of phrases in it and things. And I had a guy in front of me named Pascal. I was like, hey, Pascal. And I just started reading off. Apparently, it told you not only how to say the F word, but how to tell people what their parents should do, their family should do, all that. And he's like, what does that mean? And I look up, and my teacher, a very strong Christian woman, spoke 5 languages, really cool lady, looks at me and she goes, I'll take that. I was like, it's your dictionary. Just remember that. And
You put this temptation in front of me, madam.
Yeah. So it's probably the reason, and of course, it's the same reason Candace, the only thing she knows how to yell in Gaelic after living with me from his years is Poke
Mahone.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, it's been a couple weeks in D Hall. I was there so much that the coach, because that was his extra job, is he would actually have he printed a nameplate for me and folded it up to put on a desk. He's like, oh, Russell, you're back.
Wow.
And he was funny. He's like, all right, how was it not your fault this time? It's like, no, it was my fault.
Yeah, just own it. At least they can respect that.
And he did, because we had to write essays when we were there, like little mini essays on what we were going to do to improve. So I wrote a very good 1.5-page essay on how I was not going to use the dictionary. And he looked at it and he goes, you're smart, A. I like that. I appreciate it.
Yes.
You're good to go.
Outstanding. You know what, kid? You're kind of clever. You actually might be all right. You can make it in life.
Yeah, he was.
The rest of you, you're screwed.
He told a kid one time, he goes, you know what, kid? He goes, look, here's the deal. If you don't straighten up, you're going to be like some old, lonely, fat dude that has sores on him because he doesn't bathe right and take care of himself because he's waiting for somebody else to tell him how to do it. And then you're going to own a lot of cats, and it's going to be really, really sad. Or you could listen. Yes, sir.
Oh, we had... Wow. I think we had a teacher throw a book at a kid.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
Insulted him.
Nice.
Yeah, and he got in trouble. I don't know. I kind of felt like the kid probably deserved it.
So I was never a bad kid, but I'm a lot kinder now than I used to be. I was really a smart aleck. I mean, like, you can find those buttons and push. And I remember this algebra teacher I had, and I knew how to push his buttons. I was a complete smart aleck. And one day he finally said, if I had a gun, I would shoot you in the head right now in the middle of class. And this girl goes, you can't say that. He goes, I meant a paintball gun. I was like, no, you didn't.
Yeah, you can't. No, you don't get to walk that one back.
No, so he got in trouble. He was a shop teacher teaching algebra. And I was like, hey, look, you have 9 fingers, and I think you teach math as good as you teach shop. So hence why he wanted to shoot me in the head. And that was in the middle of class. So years later, Candace, we're poor. We're trying to go to college, so we have to go do the junior college classes as you can pay cash for and all that. And she has this guy, and she's like weeks into the course before she tells me the name of her professor because we're married now. And I said, really? I said, he was my shop teacher and my algebra teacher back in 8th grade. I was like, that's funny. I didn't give her any other details than that. So then she goes on and tells him, hey, I think you taught my husband. He goes, really, who? And she said he was all nice and everything. She says, Tony Russell. He goes, yeah. And she said, yeah, was the last word he spoke to her all semester.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, you egg a man's house, and all of a sudden they're just pissed at you.
Wow. You got me beat. I never had a teacher tell me they wanted to shoot me, but I did have one tell me she ought to smash my head against the wall.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How'd that happen? Just months worth of being a donkey in class, or
pretty much. Yeah. So there I was. Just a dumb kid. It must have been sophomore year, junior year of high school. And she's trying to make a point and try to like pique our interest in things outside of the walls of our high school where all our mutant friends are. And she says, she must have asked me specifically, what do you know about the global market? What do you know about Belgium?
They make great waffles. I mean, and I know that's got to come out. Yeah.
It's waffles. That's all I knew. That was the end of it.
Wow. That's not really that bad. I mean,
I think it was like the class as a whole. And then we got switched. They took our Spanish class, and the lady's name was Dr. Dragonis.
Oh, wow.
So if you're in high school,
yeah,
that doesn't stay Dragonis.
No, it doesn't.
No. So someone else complained. I was never going to be the kid to complain about a teacher.
Right.
Because my parents went to the same high school, and I knew that as long as I wasn't getting in too much trouble, I could live. And my siblings, my brother and my sister, they went to the same high school too. My mom actually had the same art teacher that I did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he was a cool guy. But someone else in the Spanish class went and complained about that little incident.
Yeah.
And then a few of us got called to like the vice principal's office. And then we get switched with another class from another teacher. So our class is walking down the hallway, and a couple of people are high-fiving themselves, all excited. We got rid of the old lady. All right. Well, turns out that our new teacher really liked the class that we got switched with.
Oh, so you already like pre-pissed her off.
Yeah, and she's at the end of the hall, hearing the hooting and hollering and high-fiving and everything. Oh, man, that was a bad way to start off.
Yeah, I bet you enjoyed the rest of that year.
That was everyone was very well behaved.
So, yeah, I actually feel bad the way I treated some of my teachers because you can't break through. And we should be honest with teenagers now. We should walk in and be like, look, you're behaving the way you are because you're so ignorant and you have no idea what you're ignorant. As a matter of fact, you don't even know what ignorant means. Let me tell you what ignorance even means.
Yep.
Because you have no idea how much you don't know, and you're so far down the stupid hole right now that you can't even see daylight.
Right.
So just bear with us while we try to get some sort of common sense into you. But now, of course, they don't even teach common sense. They teach Common Core.
Yeah. I did have this one teacher in my freshman year. He taught science. He was also a football coach, assistant coach. And I remember the guy, you were always afraid that you're going to piss him off. And he was out of the school one day. We had a substitute. Actually, no, they couldn't find a substitute, so we had nothing. Oh, wow. And so, because we're all goofing off, and that led to like someone who might have resembled me hiding this girl's shoe. She's like the class spaz, and so her shoe somehow got hidden in this cabinet where all
probably really high up too, if I had to guess.
No, the cabinet wasn't that high. It was on wheels, but it was behind some like glass jars. And so when she pulled it out, knocked one of the glass jars off, broke.
Totally your fault.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll take them. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And so, yeah, I went back a few days later. Something out of a combination of fear and respect for the man.
Yeah.
And told him what had happened. Yeah, after class, waited for everyone to walk out and kind of, went up there, shuffled my feet, and here's what happened. And all he said was, "Thank you for being honest with me."
Nice.
And here I am, man. Still remember that to this day, clear as a bell. That was, unfortunately, he wasn't that was not the norm. That standard where you actually have this good combination of fear and respect.
Yeah.
Some you fear because they're a little unhinged. Some you can't really respect because they want to be your buddy.
Yeah.
And some, man, they're just like retired on duty. There's another guy who's a math teacher. And I think there's a combination of fear and respect because legend has it that some student tried to stand up to him. And he just, let's go. And he was like, they're ready to drop him right there in the hallway. And I don't recall if it actually came to blows or not, but he was ready and willing to fight a student. So
there you go.
Smaller guy, but you weren't a lot more experience.
That's it. I have a buddy of mine named Tom, and I love his phrase. He used to tell his son this too, and he told other teenagers this. He's like, look, he goes, 2 things you need to remember. Number 1, my fighting philosophy is if it's worth fighting for, it's worth fighting dirty for.
Yes, sir.
Number 2, I'm old and I cheat.
Yep.
I was like, there you go. Nobody took him up on it, so it seemed to work.
If you're going to be in a fight, make it a quick one.
Yeah, that's it. Mike Tyson, I think he fought under that a couple times.
Oh, a lot of those were quick ones. So, man.
Unless they were taller than him.
He might be coming back.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Ooh, have you seen him?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can tell the guy's been training hard. And I think he's finally got that mental health issue under control now, I think. He's got a little bit more healthy attitude towards life.
Yeah, he is definitely a different person than he used to be. Now, he might be doing like a charity fight with Holyfield. And
it's funny, those guys actually stay in contact now.
Yeah.
They actually buried the hatchet.
Holyfield actually buried the hatchet very quickly.
Yeah, he did.
That night.
Yeah.
That night, as a Christian, he buried that hatchet.
Yep. I remember that.
That blows me away.
That's really cool that he could do that. I mean, if you're going to throw it out there that, hey, this is my faith, this is what I have, then you got to be ready to live it at any moment.
Yeah, well, you had all those guys from Holyfield's corner that were so pissed off, and they get back to the locker room. He says, I've already forgiven him. If I forgave him, you have to too. You don't get to hold a grudge. It's my ear.
Yeah,
and
we can do about that.
Right. But I mean, what a testimony. He was talking about that on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I think a lot of people are probably hearing that thinking, why would you? How do you do that? Yeah, well, that's not a natural thing. That's a supernatural thing.
It takes a lot to break a habit too, and you got to know that as a Christian that hey, yeah, it's a supernatural thing that I got from point A to point B.
Right.
Couldn't fix myself, obviously, nobody can, and so then. I guess when you're up against somebody like Tyson, I mean, and back then the boxing community at that level was and it still is a very tight knit community.
Right.
They knew the crap life that he had been thrown. They knew what he had been through. So, for him to be able to do that, I think was huge because he understood where he was coming from in his life at that point.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I had no idea just until like the last year or two. He seemed to carry himself differently. I mean, he wasn't like cussing out, reporters and people interviewing him. I mean, then again, I think as the guy got older and cussed out enough people decided, I don't want to poke the bear anymore. and he's a different person. And I heard him, talk about his childhood and his upbringing and the way that Cus trained him, hypnotized him.
Yeah.
Taught him to tap into ego, and ego's everything, and never taught him how to turn it off.
Yeah. And that was like a father figure to him.
Yeah. I mean,
so
I think he met Cuz when he was like 13.
Yeah. Like he credits him with taking him completely off the streets and getting him out of a bad environment. So he literally was family.
Yeah.
So mentioning when all that fell apart, why he was so devastated as well. He had no, like you said, he couldn't turn it off, and he was not grounded anymore.
And the only time that he actually felt good about himself and he felt joy was when he made Cuz proud,
Yeah.
made him happy.
Yeah.
And how did he do that? Tapping into that ego, going out there as the baddest man and just punishing people. If that's what you associate with finding meaning in life, after you grew up with that child you had in Harlem, and that equates to having meaning and purpose. Yeah, I don't know how you turn that off. It doesn't excuse any of it.
But you got to understand that, though, to
yeah.
understand the person. I mean, you got to understand people have a totally different background they come from. So to me, that was what was monumental. I think that's really what's great about Holyfield, how he was able to later connect. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, he forgave. And he made that message clear that night that, hey, I'm not going to hold a grudge. You know,
they even did a little sketch where he gave Holyfield a gift. It's a little box, you know, you'd fit like jewelry, like a necklace in or something.
Yeah.
Holyfield opens it up and it's his ear. I mean,
I thought you should have this.
Yeah. I mean, that takes that. If you don't forgive someone, how the heck are you going to go through that voluntarily?
You know, that could actually be a framework for the next presidential debate. We could just put Joe and Donald in a ring.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And just spout off one-liners that their people told them to memorize for their speech while they slug it out.
Well, Trump won't stick to the script, and Biden won't remember the script.
That's it. That kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately.
My kids actually asked me, I was like, is that a toupee? I was like, no, that's not a toupee. It's the world's best fluff and comb over.
If it was a toupee, it would be the world's worst toupee.
Yeah, no, that's holding on to it. Just shave the head. Let it go.
I don't know if you saw the clip when he was on Jimmy Fallon's show, and Fallon knew that he had him in a spot, and he said, I just want to, can I touch your hair? And Trump is either going to be, well, he's definitely not going to be cool if he says no, and so he kind of has to let him do it. And so, Fallon reaches over and just starts running his hand all over it and everything. And man, that it was horrible. It's
wow. That's almost as bad as Hillary doing Between Two Ferns with Galifianakis. Have you seen that?
That Hillary's thing was way worse, or better if you're just
that
into
should
the
go
humor of it
down.
all.
That should go down as the number one lesson for future politicians on how not to reach the next generation and being cool, because it will backfire so
Understand?
fast.
Yeah, if you're Hillary, there's no way that's going to work out for you. If you're Obama, you can probably get away with it.
Yeah, and like, who was it? I think it was Clinton. Wasn't he the first one to really try to tap into the pop culture, getting on? Like, I remember he went and played saxophone on Arsenio Hall, tried to get out there and do all that. And I think after that, everybody was like, hey, we need to be cool. And
I thought he just tried to date the younger crowd, and that was...
He did. He did a lot of that.
Yep.
He was, as Malone here, Sam Malone puts him, he tried to be cool, but came off like a sleazy used car salesman next to a strip club on South I-45 in Houston. And if you've ever been to Houston and South I-45, that's pretty sleazy.
Yeah, it is.
So that's funny. So that actually goes back to what we were talking about the last time when somebody forgot to press record on the right thing.
I feel like we should title this episode Deja Vu.
Yeah, no kidding. So we've been here before. I am watching it. It is recording this time, so that's amazing.
Second set of eyes to confirm.
Yeah, that's good. We need that. But, we really started kind of coming on to a different topic here as a behavior. It really comes down to people's behavior, and behavior over a long amount of time becomes habits, and habits are a crazy thing. I think that's, we talked about how we were growing up and all of that. And I think, at least when we were in school, teachers were allowed to try to break habits, tell you how stupid you were and how you're going down the wrong path. Hey, you have a future career in the food service industry if you don't pay attention, things like that. Whereas now that we take more of the Care Bear approach,
Right.
respect feelings and all that kind of stuff. But, I don't know, this generation we couldn't spank. This generation that it was not your fault. You need medicine, or it's a disorder. And I'm not discounting that people have disorders, but we didn't just wake up and half my grade needed Ritalin one day either.
Right.
So we tend to take things in human nature to the extreme, and they've grown up now. Now they're writing. Now they're doing all these things.
Right.
Now they're voting and doing all this. And so we realized this generation, we said it wasn't your fault. We don't have to do anything for you, or we don't have to do everything for you. It's not you. You don't have to personally own your consequences. They're adults now. They're growing. They're grown up. They're making decisions. They're in office. We get all this crap because we took a behavior and we turned it into a habit. And a habit is a stupid, insane thing to break. And it can be a good habit. Where they say anything you do for like 28 days, 21 days, something like that comes a habit. And it can be bad. But once you start, it's hard to break, and you traditionalize it. Heck, even us talking about some things that we've dealt with in church, the whole Matthew 15 thing, when Jesus was talking about traditions of the people of their time, he's like, look, you say you're honoring God because your traditions make you not honor God. So check yourself first. So all that to say this is, how many of those kids hanging out in high school that were going home were like, man, my teacher's stupid. Man, my teacher doing this. Man, my teacher doesn't understand. Yeah, that's true. You might be a butthole, though. At the end of the day, you might just be a butthole. Have you thought about that? Have you thought about your own behavior? Might be something you have to own. Well, let's just blow that up now into a big idea in America. It's this party's fault, or it's this party's fault, or it's the media's fault, or maybe it's you as a people who continue to give ear to it, who continue to reelect it, who continue to follow it. Maybe it's your fault.
Right.
Just a thought. Just throwing it out there.
Well, and all those kids that were thinking, well, it's the teacher's fault. A lot of them have parents reinforcing that idea. And it's the same thing with the politician who they go up there, they say they're going to do one thing, they do the exact opposite, and they get reelected. So you just reinforce, like they went up there, they sucked. They were just terrible. And they get reelected. So why? Okay. Hey, there's zero consequence for lying. There's zero consequence for having no spine.
Yeah.
And you get reelected.
Yeah. Pat on the back.
What do you have to do? Nothing. You don't even have to show up. If it weren't for guys like Thomas Massey, you wouldn't even have to show up to work. And you can still probably get reelected. I mean, so a buddy of mine was, I don't know if we were texting back and forth. There was a group thread or something about Abbott and the mask mandate.
Yeah.
So, man, Texas is not what it thinks it is. With we're so free here in Texas, and we have a respect for our liberties. Yeah, and I bet you anything he gets reelected.
Oh yeah.
Now I could be wrong. He might not even be eligible for reelection. I can't recall, but. I mean, if he is, that dude's getting in for sure.
And that's the thing is I talked to a guy who's a self-proclaimed libertarian, which, I think as we go on, we'll dive into more what libertarianism is. But even he lays out this whole thing, and he comes to my office and he's just venting about, he just can't believe the Republicans are doing this, the Democrats are doing this. He says, I'm a libertarian, yada, yada, yada. And as he gets to the culmination, he goes, yeah, but, I'm going to be voting Republican because I don't want to throw my vote away. Yeah, so throwing your vote away is not voting for somebody you agree with, but throwing your vote away is... I couldn't wrap my head around it. So he's going to throw his vote away voting for the person he agrees with, but not by re-electing the person who's completely failed him year after year after year. Okay, that's logical. That makes sense. And I don't know. I think that kind of goes back to that whole high school thing. It was like, I remember I was held accountable. Like, hey, you have to own this. You screwed up. You own it. I had parents that told me the same thing. It's like, look, you screwed up. You're going to own it. Well, hey, can you talk to the teacher? Yeah, I'll talk to the teacher. So that they'll tell me the next time you screw up because you're going to own it. But that's the thing is there's a lack of ownership. And we've turned this behavior it's been extrapolated into this societal norm now. It's this, I would say, even beyond a habit, it's the cultural norm now, and the foundation that it's somebody else's fault. It's the media's fault. Okay, well, where do you get your news? I've personally been asking people where you get your news from for weeks now. All of them have said social media. All of them. A couple have said, well, yeah, so I have to take, into my own hands whether I'm getting accurate news or not and go look it up. And it was a great answer. Really, really well articulated. Well, I have to go look it up then and make sure I'm getting the right thing. All right. So I followed up. What's the last news story you looked up? I don't remember.
Yeah.
So we've gone to this, but yet these are the people I hear complaining all the time. Well, this party thinks this all the time. Well, this party thinks this. Well, the media just doesn't do this. No, I'm going to think we the people are not doing what we're supposed to do.
Right.
So just a thought on that. I mean, ultimately, I think that's what drives us crazy is that, and I'm going to take us somewhere we went last time because it's new to everybody else who's listening because we didn't record it. So, hey, we get to go revisit this. But I'm going to take it in a different way. We've systemically trained people, and I hate saying systemic because that word's being so abused right now. Systemic racism, systemic prejudice, systemic failure, systemic everything.
Mm-hmm.
But we have systematically, I'll even say it that way, trained generations away from civics, away from responsibility, away from those things into, I need the government to tell me what to do. And now that behavior has become the norm. And I pitched this out last time, and I actually brought a little bit more on this, is I went and I read through the Supreme Court decisions, like all the groundbreaking ones that had to deal with race. But then I went and read all the ones that were not groundbreaking, that were just reinforcing the fight that happened during the writing and following the writing of the Declaration of Independence for freedom and anti-slavery and all that. And what gets me right now is that there is this behavior so ingrained in people that we have to turn to the government to define how we should think. It should define for us how we feel, how we should handle a certain situation. That's insane to me. I shouldn't have to turn to the government to go tell me what to think. Or I shouldn't have to scroll through Facebook, tell me what to think. So much so that even those crying out for social justice are turning to the Supreme Court to make rulings to make things better. Might I remind everybody, this is the same court that has still having difficulty figuring out what a person is.
Yep.
It couldn't decide if somebody was a Native American was a person, if someone was a slave was a whole person. It couldn't decide if a woman deserved all the personhood rights of men. And now it can only recognize you as a person once you've exited the womb. Now, 3 seconds before you were exiting the womb, you weren't a person, or that a mom's choice makes you a person magically. They don't know how to make a person, but yet we've ingrained an entire culture on turning to that for decision making instead of having any personal ownership for culture, any personal ownership for how we want our society to run an operation. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, heck, if we see it in high school, what do we see it when it's 300 million people?
Two big issues about that stand out to me. One is the idea that the Supreme Court being the final arbiter for anything other than issues between the states, but for them to decide anything for within the states it's asinine. That's the idea that you have these states, these parties that came together and said, hey, we're going to form this compact. We're going to have this body that we're going to delegate these few powers to, these few specific powers to. And if there's a dispute between us, then it's like going to arbitration. We're going to go to a party that's going to decide, hey, according to the laws we've agreed upon, what's the correct outcome here? So that you don't have both sides arguing for one another's interest. And, okay, the state saying, hey, we're going to do this, and maybe the Supreme Court comes in and says, no, constitutionally, this is between you and us. You're wrong here. Well, would you ever enter into an agreement with another party? Not even necessarily a friend, just someone that's kind of like an alliance because it works. It's like mutually beneficial, but they're the only one that gets to decide. In the case of a disagreement, they're the only one that gets to decide who's right and who's wrong.
Oh, yeah, it's such a great idea. It's like, okay, so two states don't work it out. Okay, fine. Great arbiter comes in. But hey, us and the federal government can't work it out. It's okay. The federal government will decide very neutrally and respectfully who's it going to be.
Right.
Wait, I don't like this.
Yeah.
This is not going to work.
We're knowing that you have these the founders or these minds that came together and wrote the Declaration, and they formed a government that was pretty much an experiment because there hadn't really been anything like that prior to that. And we look back and say, there's a lot of wisdom here. There's a lot of good here, especially for the times in which they lived. And they're going to fall into that sort of error? No, not buying it.
No, because it's the first thing that we're thinking is like, hey, now that we've assembled this idea for a federal government, let's make them. It's kind of like, hey, Craig and Tony are going to go into this really awesome contract, and we're going to have a lot of money and things put in for all. But Craig, I'm going to be the one that decides what's fair. Okay. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's do that. Yeah. No, that's not it. And yet, that has failed. That idea you're saying over and over and over, and yet we've ingrained people. They continue to go back to it.
Right. And there's plenty of writings, and later episodes we'll get into the specifics of the writings that indicate that was never the intent.
Right.
That no one would ever think that. At a certain time, I think, closer to the writing of the Constitution, I'm sure there's less. Some of them certainly foresaw that there's going to be debates like that. But it's one of those things where, okay, you talk about you and me having an agreement, right now, would we ever enter an agreement like that where I just completely abdicate any opportunity for me to push back and say, hey, whoa, wait a second, what about my rights here in this whole arrangement? But I have a bigger issue with that whole thing because you're going to a court, any court, you're going to government, any government, whether it's federal, state, local. They're not free from error. They're not infallible. We see this happen all the time. You see states that will violate someone's rights that are recognized by the Second Amendment. I say recognized by the Second Amendment because it's not granted by the Second Amendment. It's a recognition of a right that already exists.
Absolutely.
So if a state doesn't recognize your Second Amendment rights, do you still have those rights?
Exactly.
Okay, so if they don't recognize them, now you've got an issue. Do you say, well, that's just that? People keep looking, like you said, they're looking to the government to figure out what should we do here. They're looking to the news media. What should we do here? How should I think about this? They're looking to social media, to this mob mentality, and wondering, well, what should I do here? What's the right thing? I don't want to be, well, there's so many people saying this. I kind of have this a little bit different opinion, but I'm hearing it from so many people so vehemently, and I'm a little bit scared to stand up and take a different view on this.
So
or express a different view. Yeah, I mean, how many people have you seen stand up? Drew Brees a few weeks ago, he made a statement, and all of a sudden, the mob attacks him on social media.
Oh, they got death threat after death threat.
Yeah, and the guy caves.
Yeah.
We've seen this from so many comedians that for things that they said, tweets that they made, and jokes they made years ago, well, now that's not very sensitive. I mean, I don't care if you made it today. You're going to apologize. Did you hurt somebody?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, if you get offended by words, sorry, man, that one's on you.
Yeah.
It's a comedian telling a joke. It's what they do. But now we're like you said, looking to the government, looking to the media, looking to social media to tell us how do we think about this stuff. And it is people just completely stepping away from their responsibility to form an opinion based off of facts, based off of absolute truth.
Oh yeah, and I think that's the biggie. That's what I find is that who really thinks a court can actually define who a person is? Just for example, I mean, there's so many other examples we can have, but since I use that one, I'll stick with it. And yet we're like, here, could you make this decision for us?
Right.
Why? Who in the world thinks that these people are so infallible and all-knowing that they can define who it is? As a matter of fact, so many other decisions they make, they're not doctors, they're not psychologists, they're not economists, they're not historians, they're not anything other than somebody who studied U.S. laws. which are ever changing and self-written. So I mean, it'd be like me being a novelist and studying my own novels, and now I'm an expert in everything.
Right.
As how I really feel about that. So who can realistically think in any capacity a court is able to decide such issues like who is a person or how the whole country needs to shift on certain things. Of course, when it comes like now, the racial justice is coming out, and again, we've talked about this before. As a Christian, we see people as one race, different shades. I see one creator made roses with so many beautiful different colors. I'd expect him to do the same thing with people. Right. And really the injustice is we treated people stupid based on how much tint they had to their skin. And so we need to do that. That's why I'm shocked people still hold Darwin's theories and have never read the entire title of his Origin of Species and how it talks about the preferred races. And yet, boy, they cling to that and what social Darwinism came. And I've also had to preach the correction of 1 Kings 11 before, but won't go into that another time. But people have normalized to this. They've normalized to having government decisions or having public school tell me. There's a comic I saw the other day that says, do you think the government's really going to teach you something you need to overthrow the government or to question the government?
No.
And the kid goes, no. And they're like, hey, who picks our curriculum? The government.
Yeah.
and it's thought about that. And it's like, okay, but here's the deal is it's insanity that people would turn back. It's like vacuuming a floor and your vacuum won't pick up something. So you bend down, pick it up, look at it. And then what do people do? They throw the thing back on the floor and try it again. It's like, what do you just pick it up?
I've never done that, by the way.
Absolutely. None of us have ever. Of course we have. That's why we relate to it. Instead of doing the sensible thing and walking over the trash and throwing it away. But people have normalized to going right back to that same situation. And so I guess that's the problem is now we have to own that on our own selves. Well, the government's not doing anything. How many times have you reelected the person in office? Every time. Okay, then it's your fault. Well, the media doesn't cover this. Okay. I can use an example of that. We have some people that we know. One of them works in a library. One of them works in a bookstore. Other ones, they're readers. They read a lot. They read a lot on social media. They read a lot of their books that are narratives. I'm going to bet they read the synopsis of the book and pick which books they read based on their bias or preference. And so by the time we come to a conversation, they feel so knowledgeable. They're so informed because they've been hit with a lot of information. You and I get more information in a day than my great-grandmother, who I used to love listening to. She was born in 1904. Loved to listen to her stories. Then she got in her lifetime. We have access to that daily. A lifetime of her knowledge in a day. And yet, what I would argue is that people have normalized to being hit with all this information, but it's shallow. It's an inch deep. It's an ocean an inch deep that they're drowning of information that's also selected on bias. And so when you go to have these conversations now, we've behavioralized and normalized to, it's not your fault, it's somebody else's fault. And that scene from The Matrix, depending on what pill you want, you probably don't want the pill to know that. They're going to tell you, you're tuning in to be told what to feel and what to be mad at. And then last of all, you're hit with so much information, but it's either selected bias or shallow information. No wonder we have a generation that just goes, okay, let me go back to them to tell me what to think. We've really indoctrinated an entire couple of generations thinking that's the way to go. And they feel so knowledgeable not because they've gone and read the studies, like on the coronavirus. I actually built my data sets in Excel and update them so I can pull them in and run my little data model on it. I've actually read the medical journals that come out. And I feel like I've got a full-time family, full-time job, and full-time master's program, and we're doing full-time business on the side. If I have time, everybody else should be able to make time for that. And yet, when I talk to somebody who hasn't done all that, they've just read headlines, social media conversations back and forth, or even selected books from bias, there's no way to have an argument or a conversation because they feel now just as informed as anybody else, even though it's selected. Mm-hmm. So I think it's no wonder that we have a generation that's indoctrinated to go, well, since we feel this way all the time and we've always gone that way, to have them make decisions for us. Supreme Court, would you make that decision for us again?
Yeah. So I always wonder, you mentioned some of the ways that we got there, but I always wonder what's the drive behind all of that. Why do you just let someone tell you what to think? Why do you not look into it? Why don't you voice those opinions that you realize they might be a little bit unpopular?
Because you're instantly a racist or murderer.
Yeah. So I think it's a lot to do with fear, social fear, which, I mean, that's obviously a thing because, again, Drew Brees or anyone else has voiced anything that's been mildly offensive to someone for some reason that most of us will look at. Why is anyone even upset about that?
Yeah.
I mean, Don Lemon tried to tear Terry Crews to shreds for being critical of Black Lives Matter. The group, not the idea, but the group. And Terry Crews was just critical of the group, and all of a sudden here's a black man that's critical of a group that he says, no, there's other motives here. And he gets accused of just trying to throw the whole movement under the bus. I mean, it makes no sense, but there's no outrage towards Don Lemon for treating Terry Crews like that.
Because it was selected. So now we've normalized behavior that's its own poster child for what it hates.
Right. Oh, yeah. The whole Antifa thing just blows my mind because you have, let's use fascist means and claim we're anti-fascists.
But it's all about the name, right? It's kind of like Black Lives Matter is supposed to be about the fact that we want equality. But Black Lives Matter, the organization, is not about Black Lives that matter.
Right.
And
we're living in 1984. The Ministry of Truth, the Ministry of Peace. Oh, man. A friend of ours bought a shirt that says, make Orwell fiction again.
Oh, I need that shirt.
Yeah. And it's sold out, I think.
Yeah, I bet it's sold out because it's where we're at. We are at this place that all you have to do is title it Antifa. Have you read their manifesto or flipped through even the first couple of pages? What you have to say you agree to? Holy crap.
Right.
And yet it is the fascist textbook, but no, we're anti-fascist. And I'm tired, and I was so glad to hear Eric July call out the false dichotomy. Mm-hmm. And I've used that several times, the fake dichotomy of, if I say I'm against this, then I must be for this on the other end of it. No, I can be against both.
Yeah.
He was using it as the example of, he completely hated what happened to George Floyd, and he hated what law enforcement was being turned into.
Right.
But how so that made him anti-law enforcement? Or when he said, no, I still think we need some sort of peace officers. Now he's a racist. He goes, where's this fake dichotomy that you have to be caught in all this? And I agree. And that's what we have is we have an American people that has to take ownership for their own democracy and say, hey, maybe all this craziness is going on is because you're not looking any deeper. Don't blame the media. Don't blame your representative that you keep sending back, but examine your own behavior. Again, what would happen if 10 million businesses just decided, hey, you know what? I don't need to fear. I can do a better job keeping things clean and sanitary and everything else without the CDC coming and checking on me. We're going to open shop and we're going to keep this clean and open business. Right. I guarantee they would do a better job than anything the government would touch.
Right. For sure.
I have an example. I wrote it down here. Elk versus Wilkins in 1884. Long story short, a Native American guy leaves his tribe, goes, I want to say it's around Omaha that he's in when it was a territory, wants to vote. And they deny him that based on his race, based on the fact that, yeah, you were born in America. We know what the law says, but you still have allegiance to your tribe. So no. Horrible injustice. Supreme Court upholds this. It's not until 1924 that there's this, the Native American or the Indian Citizenship Act where they can become citizens. And yeah, isn't it ridiculous?
Right.
I want to throw this out there. That Supreme Court decision still stands today. It still stands to be used for precedent today. It was never overturned. It was never withdrawn. It still stands. And so,
It's fun. I don't remember covering that in high school.
oh, isn't that crazy?
Right.
So, and this is where I want to go into this behavior. Is like right now, everybody's like, well, the West is terrible. The West is horrible. And at the end of the day, okay, cool. Go to the Middle East and make a stand for the minority groups there. Go to Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia. Make a stand for that. Go into certain parts of any other part outside the West and make these stands, and you have zero platform to talk. Mm-hmm. You're locked down. You're arrested. You're beaten. So I guess my thing is why would you want to turn to the government and strengthen it instead of championing a limited government in a republic that allows a format to debate, address topics, seek justice? I mean, heck, all the civil rights movements and everything, all the ground we've gained was due to people, not the government. So why in the heck have we really trained two generations that they're outcrying for change, but the first thing we want to do is go strengthen the very thing that's going to be their biggest threat to making change. So let me go to the Supreme Court. Let me go to the government. Let me go do this. And I would say, here we are jacking around, joking about high school and how we used to act, but we were held accountable. We were corrected. We had to be taught. We had to move on. We were naturally ignorant as people until we learned something. Well, now we're a couple generations deep where ignorance is marketed towards, and that behavior has been normalized to. And really, I would say now, until we can own our own behavior, it's not everybody else's fault. It's our own fault.
Yeah. And I'll take it back to, I'll scale it down a little bit more. Because the idea that we need to worry about our democracy or our republic, really, at some point you have to realize that there's no longer a rule of law to where it's rights for all. Now you've got a government that is propping up rights for some, certain rights for some, at the cost of others, and not because people said, well, here, I'll give up my money to help someone do this. Kind of like with that false dichotomy you're talking about, that Eric July was talking about. Bastiat had as another quote about, people assume that because we believe that welfare is wrong, giving the government feeding the hungry is wrong, that we believe is wrong to feed the hungry. No, we just believe it's wrong to do it by force. We would do that willfully on our own. Yeah. But those are two different things. So being against that one thing doesn't mean that you're against the actual act itself. You're against the force and the monopoly of force, to whether it's to take taxes from someone or force someone to buy something or to prevent someone from doing something, such as own firearms or whatever the case might be.
Right.
And this is where it comes down to, at any level, you're going to have tyranny. For a long time, Texans have worried about tyranny coming from the federal government. A lot of Americans worried about tyranny from the federal government. Well, now you're seeing it from a whole lot of different state governments. Yeah. And then Texas, that used to be it was so big and bad and such a radical right-wing state, is now has a governor that's not too much further off from California or New York. So then you have a whole lot of people that are inside that jurisdiction. Okay, well, what do you do about the people that don't agree with that? Now, do you have a majority that's elected that governor, and you're going to subject the minority to the tyranny of that majority just because it's inside of that state boundary? What about inside of a county? Right. And then the different cities inside of a county. So, state nullification is an awesome thing because there's been a lot of evils from the federal government have been kind of staved off by state governments that are willing to step up and interpose, or even sheriffs that are willing to step up and interpose. You don't see too many of them. You'll probably see, maybe you'll see a few start to stand up now, but not too many. If they are, they're not necessarily doing it for the right reasons. But ultimately, this comes down to self-nullification. And what is the individual willing to do? when will they take a stand, and how far will they take it?
Yeah. No.
When will they give in? If you believe something's right, then you best do it. If you believe something's wrong, you don't do it. And you don't comply because you're afraid of the force that someone else might bring upon you. And you've seen a lot of, Greg Abbott's been trying to talk big game. Listen, you guys don't start complying with these mask orders, I'm going to shut the state down again.
Yeah, threaten your whole economy and livelihood now.
Right.
Just to make sure that, hey, you're gonna do what's best. And you know what? I think that's the big issue here is the fact that, okay, like at the time of this recording, mask is the huge issue. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. I'm a pro-masker and an anti-masker. That's pretty much, you're thrown into those two camps because apparently that's the only dichotomy, again, that exists. I'm one or the other. And I would disagree with that on the terms that people don't necessarily disagree with the mask itself, but people are now not wanting to wear the mask because of the fact that their personal liberty was threatened and their economy's been threatened over it. Not that they're like, hey, I don't mind doing something, especially these people who don't even go anywhere. And they're being told because they don't do like these folks that are driving around by themselves in their own car with a mask on and gloves on. It's ridiculous. Because they're not to that extreme. Mm-hmm. Well, you must be hateful. You must be terrible. No, these people who probably would have been convinced to wear a mask if private business just said, hey, look, we're just asking you to do this. Or, hey, just out of that whole Romans 14 thing, out of for your weaker brother who's really afraid about this, you could do that. You'd probably have a lot more people go, okay, I don't agree, I don't like it, I'll do it. But when you make it an order and you say this is going to be enforced, this has to happen, you immediately turn people off because right behind that order was, hey, I might have to shut us down again. You're threatening our livelihoods now with something that, you look at these global studies, and again, nobody's looking at them hardly, that are showing, hey, that doesn't make a difference, actually, except in certain situations. You're in a dense area like New York, then yeah. But no, ultimately, you're right. What's going to happen is the mass majority of people live in the cities. They're going to make an election, and all of us who are dispersed across a bigger geography in rural areas but less populated have to be subjugated to that.